This is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news and intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversations. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the management and staff of Guardian Radio.
With early detection comes early prevention.
Put lead in your pencil, make you feel like a champion.
Rise up again, let nothing keep you down. To live your best, hear the urologist speak. Oh yeah.
Think you're losing grip of your man, then don't give up on hope.
Don't be ashamed, it's time to take control. Get some help from the urologist.
You will find
He'll help you solve your problems
on 96.9, yeah.
I telling you, with early detection.
Good evening once again. This is the Urologist Speaks with Bahamian Urologist, Dr. Greggory Pinto, and my co-host, this is Dr. Wesley Francis, who is a Bahamian general surgeon and surgical oncologist. Good evening, Dr. Wesley Francis.
Hey, good evening, Greg, and good evening, Bahamas.
So we're here trying to promote healthy living. We're trying to promote positivity in our nation. We're trying to make this generation better than the last. So we're trying to tackle many issues from all aspects. So not just health, and when we talk about health, not just the physical, we're also talking about the mental, psychological. We're talking about the ways, we'd always like to say that the health of the nation is the wealth of the nation. But we're also talking about the youth. We're talking about a healthier youth in terms of just obesity. We have an overwhelming number of obese individuals per capita. We are one of the most obese nations on earth, fourth in the world, which is a crying shame. I keep heralding that. We have a very high rate of non-communicable diseases, hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. 1 in 7 of our Bahamians and persons within the Bahamas are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. That's alarming in itself. We have a very uneducated society, unfortunately, and this generation is worse than the one before and then worse than the one before that. What we're going to talk about today is the BGCSE results. It was very disappointing. We always been hearing this for years, that we have the D average, looking at the percentage of male and female students who achieved a C or higher in English and mathematics and science, less than 10%. I mean, that is absolutely deplorable. What's the answer? How can we overcome this? And our nation is not going to get any better if we're not educating this generation.
Yeah, I mean, education is important for everything within our community, obviously, and health. One of the social determinants of health is actually education, and a more educated people tend to be more healthy, because you obviously have a greater health literacy and
a better standard of living,
a
higher income,
a better workforce.
Yes,
more educated workforce,
less stress, daily stress.
It's so. Let's unpack the BGCSE results. I mean, you saw the newspaper yesterday when they put it out, and I just took a look at the stats. Metrics are interesting, and what metrics you put out there to give the narrative that you want. But when you compare 2023 and 2024, the total number of candidates taking the BGCSE, and we'll just focus on that one because, I mean, that's mostly, people who are leaving school and entering the workforce or going for higher education. The total number is 5,393 in 2023 and 5,935. And so the metric that it's put out by the Ministry of Education is in the newspaper is those who receive a C or above average in greater than 5 subjects or 5 subjects or more. And that number, they give the absolute value, which is 544 for 2023 compared to 653, and an apparent increase. But when you look at the percentages, last year it was 10.1%, and this year it's 11%. So the real difference is less than 1%. So that's really not a significant difference between the 2 years. And then you look at the number who had a D or higher. Last year was 901, which overall was a 16.7% for 2023. But then in 2024, it was 1,009, and that's 17%. So the net difference really was only 0.3%. So really nothing to, be so proud about in terms of the difference. And then the last metric they put out there was C or greater in math, English, and science. And the overall number in 2023 was 303. That's the absolute value. And in 2024 was 431. And when you look at the percentage in 2023 was 5.6% overall. And in 2024, it's 7.3% overall. So the difference is 1.6%.
I mean, an alarming percentage of our youth are graduating from high school without the basic skills to basically go on to the next stage of life. And that's very, very frightening. Very, very
Well,
frightening.
yeah, I mean, so how you put metrics forward is interesting. So you could say that, based on this data, that 89% of people leaving school or who took the BGCSE last year, 89% had a less than C average in more than 5 subjects.
And that goes back to the narrative, the D average. And it's not a political issue. It doesn't fall on any political party. It doesn't fall on any Ministry of Education, or who's the director, or who's the permanent secretary, or who's the minister at the time. It's a national crisis.
Well, yeah, it's arrived. I think it was at crisis proportion before. I mean, 10.1% or 90% versus 89%. There's not any significant difference. So I mean, year over year. I mean, if you're running a business like this, right? I mean, year over year, you have this kind of losses. I mean, it would cause an alarm. It would be an alarm. It'd cause a raised concern. And so, I mean, we're here to just sort of unpack this, to talk about it and hear what you have to say about this. I know we tend to be very negative sometimes when we raise it, but I think if we don't
Sound the alarm
and make everybody aware, it's a crisis, and then try to be more solutions focused than problem focused or problem centric. We got to do something about this. I certainly don't have all the answers or much answers, but certainly it's something that I think we as a community need to address.
And then year after year, the females continue to outperform the males. And that has to do with the psyche of the male population. That goes from not just the student. It has to do with their parents. It has to do with their father, their grandfather, their uncle, that do not stress education, that do not stress success. It's frowned upon for the average Bahamian male to succeed, to be on the honor roll, to study instead of being on the basketball court.
This is really linear. I mean, if you look at it, right? Yes, a lot more male students are not doing as well. And we see that. We look at our medical school class, right?
80-90% are female.
Right. So when I was
if you
in
look at the
medical
interns
school,
now, it's 90-something% female. It's all female.
And so, but that's not only in medicine. I'd imagine that's what's happening in
I'm
business.
sure, I'm
that's
sure
what's
it's in every
happening
field, in the legal
all the
field,
different, professional fields.
even
or-
teachers. When we look at teachers,
Yeah. Well,
they're predominantly
yeah,
female.
predominantly females,
And we
so,
look at the other issue: are there enough male teacher role models
right.
for our male pupils?
So you wonder, you think that, oh, we got a call already?
We have
All right.
a couple calls coming
Okay,
in. Good
good.
evening. This is Urologist Speaks.
Yes, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
Great. I just want to throw something out there that perhaps may help us dive a little deeper into some of these numbers. And it may be far-fetched. What about the possibility of a particular individual or individuals knowing 90% of the work, but the 10% that they do not know, that 10%, the exam covers 90% of that 10%. And so that may be attributed to their failure on an exam.
Well, I mean, we're physicians. We've done thousands of exams in our life, and a lot of it is luck. I mean, you're not going to know everything, and sometimes what is asked is just the luck of the draw. But the more that you know, the more that you know, the likelihood of that happening is minuscule. So
No,
I'm not.
I don't buy it.
Yeah,
I think we have professional people who know how to set exams. And,
Yeah,
and
I'm
so,
saying, right, because I hear the numbers, and I do agree that we could do a whole lot better, but I know of situations where persons know a whole lot of the work. Actually, I know it in reverse. There was a guy many years ago who went to take his private pilot license, the exam for it. And I remember his instructor saying to me that this guy is going to fail. However, the exam was broken up into 5 different sections, and you were only allowed to take one of those 5 sections. It just so happened that the section he knew the most on was the one he actually sat, and he ended up passing his exam. But this was many years ago.
Right.
I don't think they do it that way anymore. So there are situations where persons know a whole lot, but the exam doesn't cover everything that one would have studied. And so you may find yourself, as I indicated earlier, knowing 90% of the work, but the 10% that you know, the exam probably covers that 10% more
I mean,
than the 90% that you know.
I think that could be isolated. I wish that the Ministry of Education would put out the bell curve, right? Because I think you got to look at metrics on a curve to say what the average is, what the standard deviation from the mean, and all of that. I think what you're talking about does happen, but I believe that it may be a one-off, right? Like that's not going to happen to everybody. So,
But if the ministry is saying that the overall grading structure has changed from what we know it to be from A, B, and C as being passed, and they changed that to where D is also a pass, but yet we are still using the C average as that standard, then perhaps we too need to take another look at it. Perhaps the ministry needs to simplify it and go back to what it used to be, so we have a better grasp as to actually what these children are doing.
yeah, I agree with you, but I think what they should do is publish the bell curve, or publish the raw data for us to all look at it.
Will say. The bell curve will say.
Yeah,
but
it would.
also,
Right.
when you start dealing with numbers, the bell curve will take on those students who took the exam this year, not who
Yes.
took the exam in previous years or
Agreed.
the years following, which means that a person who would have done well this year based on the bell curve, if they take the exam next year, may not do as well. That's how really messed up statistics are.
Yes, obviously you can choose statistics and look at metrics however you want to spin the narrative that you want, right? It's kind of the age of spin. But it's still, I think it's still looking at the crowd era or the herd era and still says something about our educational system and how
I'm not
we
denying-
should try to improve that. I mean, it's a problem, and I think we should.
It does, and
Yeah.
I'm going to hang up now, right? But it does, and I'm not getting away from that. I just
Right.
thought I would put that out there, just
Yeah.
for you to consider that for some individuals, that could be the case. Not all, as you
Understood.
indicated, it's a one-off, and there may be very few persons who that happen to.
Right.
And you will be able to track those individuals, and you will see over time when they find themselves in the work environment and the things that they do differently, and
Right.
perhaps go off to say like a junior college or the like and find themselves.
Right.
Right. But nevertheless, you're correct. There are things that need to be done differently. I think we should be doing a whole lot better in school. And for me personally, I think a lot of that has to do with parenting for the most part. And there's a whole lot of social, economic situations that
Yes.
develops off of those type of statements. But nevertheless, I think for the most part, parenting has a lot to do with it, or lack thereof, I should say.
Very good points. Very good points. And there is actually
Okay.
there's a skill to taking exams. I mean, you can be the most intelligent person in the world if you can't put down the answer, even though you have it in your head. That's an issue. It's the way you learn as well. Some persons have been taught to just memorize instead of understand. Obviously, if you can understand the subject matter, you're going to do a lot better than just trying to memorize, because you're going to be overwhelmed with the wealth of information that you need to put together, and you're doing many subjects in a short period of time. And then there's the confidence issue. I mean, there are a lot of males in particular who just don't believe in themselves. I'm just no good at math, and no matter what you present to them, they're not going to do well in math because they don't believe in themselves. So it's the psyche of our youth as well, males more than females, but it goes across the board. We have another call coming in. Good evening. This is Urologist Speaks.
Yeah, first time calling to the show. Listen, I mean, not making an excuse, but there's a lot of people who we call not book smart. They're more hands-on, and so don't care how much they try. They just ain't got it, And so that's why I think BTVI and all those was developed, so they could develop a skill.
Yeah, obviously.
Everybody ain't book smart.
Yeah, there's book intelligence, and then there's life intelligence. There's some persons who are master carpenters. There's some persons who are master plumbers, and they'll do exceedingly well in life. They'll have a staff of 20, and they'll live the best life possible. It doesn't mean you just need to find your niche. You need to find what you are talented at, and I have the greatest respect for those who are builders, who are mechanics.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
No, that's great, because I mean we need more. We need a lot of more people in those industries, because those industries help build our communities.
That's the background of our society.
It
I mean,
is,
Yeah.
right?
So I mean, when things break down, when we need to build up our nation, when we need to build our houses,
But still, I mean,
the
with
infrastructure, we need to have those individuals.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I think everybody learns differently. And so you have to sort of understand the diversity of individuals and be able to identify early those people who may be better off with their hands, and sort of guide them and direct them in that way. I mean, I think that's what guidance counseling is all about, and all the people who guide and direct our kids in schools. Teachers influence students a lot. Your father influenced me a whole lot. I remember I wanted to be a chemical engineer. That's what I wanted to do. And Mr. Pinto said to me, you ain't gonna make no money with that. You should probably go into medicine. He told me that in the 11th grade. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be a chemical engineer. I loved chemistry, and I didn't want to do that. And so, but he had that influence on me. He directed me in a different way. But overall, I think we ought to find role models, mentors, and be able to recognize people who where their strengths are. Some people just may not be, as the caller said, may not be a good test takers. They may not understand and appreciate math and English and all of that traditionally how it is taught. But still, overall, though, I mean, if I'm going to have a carpenter or I'm going to have an electrician, they still need to have a basic level of English, math, and for them to run their own business, because it's a business for them, right?
Very much so. Very much so. So you and I have done well academically over the years, going back to our youth. As Bahamians, what is your perspective in terms of how are you treated by other persons in your class? I mean, were you looked down upon because you excelled academically? I mean,
No, well,
were you revered, or was it the opposite? I mean, were you encouraged to succeed?
no, I mean, for me, and again, everybody is different, but for me personally, I was always somebody who I loved to achieve. So, and for me, that was intrinsic. Nobody around me could have made me feel any different way. I was very competitive. I wanted to be on top all the time. I'm still that way. So that was innate. I did, and again, I mean, I think on this show we've talked about me a whole lot, right? But I mean, I didn't come from a home that had a lot of books or parents that went to college or anything like that. I mean, there's a lot of data out there that say that that's what's necessary for kids to succeed, but not all the time. And but you have to have that drive. I think all kids have drive, but we just have to sort of find that within them and cultivate it. I always had a drive. I still have a drive. I'm still taking tests, right? Because I'm a striver. We have a call?
We have another
Good.
call. Good evening. This is Urologist Speaks.
Hello.
Yes, good evening. Welcome.
Yes, gentlemen. I'm calling to give you some facts on BGCSE.
Okay.
Yes.
As you mentioned before, first of all, good show, good topic. I listen to you every week.
Well, let me just start at the outset. My aunt was director of education for many years, and she actually initiated and brought BGCSE. What was it, in 1993? So I'm well versed on the history of the BGCSE, and my father has been a teacher for 50 years.
Well, yeah. Anyway, first of all,
We're talking to a guru, by the way.
I know who we're talking to.
Okay.
As you gentlemen mentioned earlier on the show, you the two of you have written many exams, UWI, UB, COB, whatever. Now, the BGCSE is not that type of an exam. It's not a pass-fail exam. The philosophy of BGCSE is to allow the candidates to exhibit their skills and their skill levels, and you have various levels of skills that they can exhibit their expertise in. So it's not a pass-fail thing, and it's really non-mathematical to talk about a D average. The range of grades goes from A down to G, and obviously an average would be D. So it's really mathematically not correct to talk about a D average. So they have grade levels. So for instance, if I get a D in physics, then there are grade descriptors that will allow me to tell somebody, let's say I want to get a job at BTC, and they will require me to have a C grade or a B grade where I have certain skills that I can use on the job. So it's not a pass-fail thing. So let's talk about who uses BGCSE. UB does. If you get 5 BGCSEs, A, C, or above, you can get a scholarship, academic scholarship to go there, and you have to retain a certain GPA. Okay. It is not used traditionally by colleges on the Eastern Seaboard. They have the U.S. colleges and universities have the SAT, and the Canadians would require a transcript. Okay, so the Canadian colleges don't look at the SAT as such. You have the ACT, you have the SAT plus and ACT and all that. Those are all exams that the Eastern Seaboard colleges look at. Some of them don't. And very few people ask for BGCSE. As a matter of fact, people get their acceptance into college or university long before the BGCSE results come out. Now, let's talk about the relevance of BGCSE. Yeah, I think it's time. I think the Minister of Education is probably thinking along these lines about getting rid of it because really it assumes that the Bahamian education system is one of the top education systems in the world. I always say this, but the one big flaw is that everybody is assumed to be an academic, and it's not. True. So it's time for us to take a look at the skill set of the children. And in grade 9, they should be given a test where they prove that they belong in a certain technical area, maybe business or whatever, and stop feeding them this three-year comprehensive. The poor Bahamian children are probably the worst treated in the world. They, first of all, at the end of grade 9, they have to write a 3-year comprehensive BJC exam, total torture. And at the end of grade 12, they have to write a 3-year comprehensive BGCSE. I mean, in the rest of the world, really, there's a subject for a semester, and you write your exam and pass or fail, and you move on. So, and they have a credit system. So I think Mr. Lionel Sands, former director, started the credit system, and I give him all the credit for it. I think we should ditch the BGCSE and move on with the credit system. And COB or UB has the credit system. So we just move on that way. And we feed into the colleges. So BGCSE is really a British exam. And really, when you look at all the GCSE in England, there are various boards of education in England. And out of all those boards, the BGCSE is the toughest of the exams. Okay? Well, so we have to think about these things. And then we have to factor in the COVID factor as well. COVID really did a number on the student's psyche. How would you like it if you were locked up in your room for two years with only a laptop and somebody talking to you on the screen? It would affect you. So, and we're just recovering from it. Anyway, that's basically all I have to say. This BGCSE show is really probably a 3-hour show.
All right.
Anyhow.
Well, thank you so much for your contribution, and we totally give deference to you. We know who you are, and honestly, I mean, you shared a lot of insight on it, and certainly, I look at it in a different way now. But you're right. I suppose a credit system would perhaps be better. It'll be interesting to hear from other people to see what their thoughts are on this.
I mean, the point is that not everybody's an academic. And I think we need to streamline our students and gear those who want to excel, even if it's in the arts or excel in science, and we can have a school just catered to that. Obviously, not everyone's going to be at the same academic level. So when you are expecting a teacher to teach 45, 47 students of varying aptitude, it's an impossibility because you can't speak to everyone. You're going to lose someone along the way if you go at a certain level. And obviously, you talk about those who have ADHD. I mean, all it takes is one student to act up, 2 students to act up, and the entire semester is disrupted, and that's what teachers have to cope with. I mean, it's a very difficult occupation, a very challenging occupation. Economically, it's not the best one to get into. We have a high cost of living. You're living month to month. You have all the pressures of, now we have school violence. We have sexual intimidation throughout the school. There's so many things that you have to deal with. We have gangs recruiting within the school itself. You have persons coming to school not even having had a meal in the last 2 days.
I hear you, but I feel like it's been that way. I mean, when I was
I
in
think
school,
it's getting
we
worse.
faced those same
It's
things.
getting worse.
Yeah, it's probably getting worse, but I'm saying that we face those same pressures. And there's still, I believe, a level of resilience among our students, and we have to tap into that and see how best we do. I think we're losing a lot of our young men. We see it because I understand the caller and what he said about this, and perhaps the system needs to change, perhaps, but there's still an assessment level that's being done, and this is an assessment level. Okay, well, maybe it's the wrong test, maybe it's the wrong assessment. I mean, I think we can say that, perhaps, right? I'm not so sure. I'd like to hear some other people and see what they say. But even when I look at this, yes, 5 colleges, well, UB, sorry, you would get a scholarship to go to UB if you get 5 and above, and a C average. So look at this. That means, I mean, if we look at these numbers, there's really only 10% of people leaving school would qualify for that. And I think that that's an issue. I believe that that's a problem. that's a college level education that is free of charge, essentially, if you meet that level. I understand what the caller said, but that means then that 90% of people don't even meet that. And again, I mean, university education, you don't all have to be academics, right? But you need to be able to at least get a certain level of education and become whatever, or enter whatever industry, and that allows you to diversify the economy. How do you diversify the economy? You have a lot of entrepreneurs who, because of a certain field that they've studied in, and they bring that stuff at home and then they grow it. The pie has to be grown, and I think the only way it could be grown is if you have people, not necessarily academics, but people who have a certain level of education, who then enter industry and bring those resources at home and then develop those.
I think also we have to look at the psyche. How many young males look at their uncles, look at their fathers, look at their grandfathers, and know that, you know what, this is a tourist destination. I can do the bare minimum in school, play the fool, play basketball, don't hit the books at all. I can be a waiter and make a great living on tips in one of the hotels, and that's all they want. They don't see beyond that. They don't see. They don't aspire for more than that. So they know that you don't really need much to get to that level, and they'll be satisfied with that.
Well, yeah, and again, I suppose there has to be some level of intrinsic incentive and where people push themselves. But okay, you would say, I mean, if you look at that, right, based on the conversation, what you said just now, I could extrapolate from that we put out a lot of people in the service industry, right, the tourism. We put them at that level where they're in the hotels. How many owners that we have, though, right? I mean, if we can grow at the base level, shouldn't we be able to grow, and even through experience and exposure, and may not necessarily be through academics, but experience and exposure, get to the level where we have a lot more people actually running hotels and being owners of hotels? Like, I don't know the metric. I wish someone could call in and tell us what the metric is, but how many people actually own hotels? How much Bahamians who would have come through, even if they started from the busboy going all the way to CEO of a hotel industry? Because that's an industry where we produce a lot of people, based on what you just said. I mean, it's been going on for 50 years, right? 51 years. We've been in the hotel industry. How many of those people have we produced?
And I mean, how many students are we just basically aging for it? Because they're reach a certain age, the system is overwhelmed. We can't have them repeat once, twice, 3 times. How many sixth graders, seventh graders are barely literate?
Perhaps an overall. I mean, a large overall, or the more common term that people use. We need to probably be more disruptive, right? Disruptive in a positive way.
We'll talk more about this on the other end of the break.
Boy, you know what going down tomorrow?
No, what happening?
Joe bringing these knives to school. He could do Junior in.
For what?
Boy, he fooled with Joe girl.
Mother sick. And you know Junior don't back down for nothing. So that means you got a big fight tomorrow.
So whose side you on?
Side? I trying to stay in school, not Simpson Penn. We gotta tell somebody about this fight.
Tell somebody? I ain't no snitch. I mean cool, you know.
Boy, if you so cool, then you need to stay in school and stay out of the fight.
Yeah, but if I don't hang on Joe's side, how many boys coming for me next?
Alright, so we definitely gotta tell somebody. We gotta prevent the fight.
What I say, I don't want nobody call me snitch.
We could just call Crime Stoppers. You could report what you know, and nobody gotta know it's you.
So what are the boy?
All you gotta do is call them or you text them through the Crack Crime Bahamas app and nobody can know it's you.
Then the police come looking for me for more info? And when they finish with them, Joe them coming looking for me?
When you call Crime Stoppers, the calls go directly to Miami and they don't ask nothing about you. Then you can get the pen from them and they can claim a reward later using that same pen.
Plus, everything's scrambled, so nobody can read what you're saying.
Call 328-8477 from Nassau or 242-300-8477 from the Family Islands.
Always on the go? Missed the show? You can now listen to Guardian Radio talk shows anytime, anywhere on Spotify and YouTube by searching Guardian Radio 96.9 FM or by entering the name of your favorite show. You can also listen by logging on to GuardianTalkRadio.com and clicking on the podcast tab. Guardian Radio, continuing to provide you with fresh news and smart talk anywhere, anytime, all day.
For fast, reliable, and impactful printing services, look no further. Let Printmasters bring your masterpiece to life. We stand by our quality products that is second to none. Our affordable pricing and friendly, efficient staff makes Printmasters the ultimate choice for all your printing needs. We can deliver any type of printing services, from banners to booklets to business cards. You name it, we can print it.
Let Printmasters bring your masterpiece to life.
Located in the Nassau Guardian Building, telephone 302-2361.
Love the show? Want to give your support? Become a sponsor today. Call 302-2300 for our rates and packages. That's 302-2300. Become a sponsor on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Welcome back. This is Urologist Speaks with Bahamian urologist Dr. Greggory Pinto and Bahamian general surgeon and surgical oncologist Dr. Wesley Francis. We're talking about the state of our educational system. We're talking about males who are unfortunately falling way behind their female counterparts, and what is the solution? We're becoming a more uneducated nation, generation by generation, and we've brought about the topic of brain drain as well. So we can do everything, and everything can go well, and we can have 20% of our students excelling and doing great things, and what does it say for our nation and our future if they never come home? We're just improving the other nations. We're I've brought it up, I think, even last week. Our nurses, the best nurses that we have, are being poached by Canada, United States, Australia, United Kingdom. Our healthcare system is suffering because of it. It happens in every industry. Our brightest and our best are excelling. They get their PhDs, they get their specialist medical degrees, they excel in the legal profession, they get their MBAs, they do well electrical engineering, accounting, et cetera, and they just never come home. They get wonderful offers from businesses abroad, and they're improving that society that they plan to inhabit. We get another call coming in. Good evening. This is Urologist Speaks.
Good evening. I really appreciated the point the last caller made about credits. That could be a way out of the exam system because the BGCSE exams it doesn't cater to the low ability students. It caters to the high ability students. Also, I want to ask about, from a health perspective, I know you are doctors, right? Are we really checking the students out, medically speaking? Are they all being checked out in school, so that whatever is bothering them health-wise won't affect their education?
I think that is a problem. Even psychologically, emotionally, we're not doing enough to support our young males in particular. There's a lot of chaos in their homes. There's a lot of violence that surrounds them. There's a lot of single mothers who are striving to do their best for their kids, and because they're torn with trying to pay the next bill, They may have 2-3 jobs. They're not there to supervise or provide guidance for their children. It's an unfortunate trend that's getting worse and worse. In the 1960s, maybe 70% of our Bahamian children were born within wedlock. Now it's the opposite. Nearly 75-80% are born to single mothers. And when we have a very high, what was the statistic from University of the Bahamas? You need at least $10,000 a month for a middle-class family to survive. How can a single mother contend with that? It's an impossibility. So,
well, I think what the caller was asking really, are there any school health programs?
It goes more than that.
I think
we have a very unhealthy nation. There's a lot of obesity.
I think there is a program in place, right? And I think what we should probably, and again, bring awareness to. He raises a point. If people are not, or students are not learning because of either, there are many people walking around with some kind of undiagnosed learning disability, and again, and what they often need so that they can become productive members of society is sort of an individual education program. All of that, I'm sure, requires a lot of resources and stuff like that. And but I believe that there is some element of that within the school system. I mean, when we were going to school, there was always at least from a public health perspective, there was a school nurse and there was a school health program. I'm not certain as to how extensive it is now and what do they do or what their scope of work. But it was certainly there when we were in school,
I mean, the percentage of students now who have attention deficit disorder or have fall in some end of the autism spectrum or are emotionally have some trauma that they're dealing with. I mean, the numbers are getting more and more.
It's probably
the
it's going unrecognized. I think it's going unrecognized for whatever reason. Why I don't know why the number is up, but a lot of folks are going unrecognized and perhaps not recognized until they're in adults. And I think that this probably needs to be addressed much earlier. And so yeah, I think the last caller raises a great point. I mean, we should start looking into these things in the public school sector.
But Dr. Pinto was making a very interesting point about the economic situation in the homes, right? I'm a retired teacher, right? And I can recall many a times students that come to school late. And when they come to school late, they tell me, they woke up late, right? Because they worked the night before. Right. Or they came to school late because, I have to take my little brother and sister to school, right? When some of these children wake up in the morning, there's no parent at home. They have to fend for themselves. Now, it really warms my heart to see on TV the other day that they were actually feeding the children, giving them a breakfast, right? And that's a good program, too. So it's a multifaceted program, yes. Right? We have the health issue, we have the economic issue, and hopefully if we tackle it from all perspectives, there might be a way out of our dilemma. And also the credit system that the caller mentioned.
I mean,
thank you, gentlemen.
You made wonderful points. Yeah. I mean, there's so many cases in our nation where you have single mothers who are overwhelmed, and a lot of the economic burden of the family surviving falls on the older children, and their future is sacrificed because of it. How can you study? How can you do homework? How can you prepare for exams when every minute after school you got to be packing in the food store, whether you're male or you're female, just to put food on the table for your siblings?
So, Greg, how do we fix these things? I mean, again, problem-centric. We can identify all the problems ever, right? But how do you, where are the solutions coming from, right?
I mean, we need to stop the cycle of single mothers, where you see your mother struggling, having 4 kids for 3 different men. You should want better for yourself. You need to stop that cycle. You should want to have better for yourself. You should want to have better for your offspring. and your mother should want better for you. And that's not happening. The cycle just continues and continues and continues.
Why shall you get into some little trouble here, right?
It's the facts.
No. But I mean, again, single mothers, right? So it's all a behavioral thing, right? And choices, okay?
I mean, I'll say it even in a positive way. Our society is a matriarchal society. Our society, the backbone of our society are single mothers. Many of them, I'll even say most of them, the majority of them, are heroines who are raising children in the most difficult of circumstances.
Let's think of a solution, right? So perhaps even... Oh, we got another caller? Okay.
We have another caller.
Go ahead, yeah.
Good evening. This is Urologist Speaks.
Hello.
Yes, good day.
Yeah, good evening. How are you gentlemen doing?
We're great. Good to hear from you.
Conversation, Doc, just to give you, I was born in 64, and so, my youngest brother would have been maybe 13 years younger than me. So, it did impede me just slightly, but, I passed some BJC, some GCs, right? But it did like, the mom used to be like, the family structure was married, but for me, this is nothing new of having to take care of siblings, but I would agree with the last caller that the burden is more on the younger generation in that there may be more siblings and maybe more members in the family. And I see it because in the city, I see it a lot where there's the onus is on younger children to carry their younger siblings to school before they go to school. I mean, before they themselves go to school. But what I'd like to say is who's responsible for this level of, as far as it relates to feeding and all of that, and we see the social degradation, given the fact that Dr. Pinto just stated at $10,000 a month, right? I don't know who's making that, but I definitely ain't making that, right? So that means I poor. So remember now, inflation and the financial system is all controlled by people. They don't want you to believe that, but you could just go and read silent record for quiet words. But what I'd like to touch on is the medical field, and the question I'd like to ask Dr. Pinto as it relates to urology, because like, let's say, Dr. Pinto, I know, I mean, I guess you have never had a biopsy for the prostate, right?
No,
That's what I'm saying. So I had one. I can't remember if it was you or Dr. Stevens, whoever did it with the ultrasound. And so as I experienced that, then I'm saying that it was painful, and I was bleeding. I wouldn't like to say from where, it's gross, but what I'm saying is, so, and my question to you, is this invasive to you? And I would like let's say I did the suprapubic in the bladder, with the catheter, right? And so, like, I noticed no one had asked me questions, like to collect data, like to find out what's the side effects of these things as I experience the spasms and stuff like that. It can help doctors if they have more dialogue or have like an input center where patients can really talk about side effects post-surgery. It will really be good for you all to learn more also, because I've sat in places and I've seen interns don't know what I know because of the conditions that I had. And so I learned from my body. You see what I'm saying? So I thought that would be great to get input from patients. It'll make you all more, I mean, you know a lot, but it'll be much better. And I just thought that would be it. Let's say, for me, it would be less invasive for me to take an MRI, right, versus doing a biopsy, because the biopsy is painful. I did it at the time because I had a young child, and you know what I mean. But for me, it is painful. It is painful, even though it's only a second here and then, but it actually is painful. So I just like to hear what you guys have to say about that. But as it relates to diet, Dr. Pinto and I can't remember Dr. Johnson or what, I didn't get your surname. He's an oncologist, right?
Francis.
What I'm saying is, me at 60 years old, looking at the food that is circulating in our society and the diet that the primary schools are on, and the fact that people are still allowed in the front of these schools to sell all of these simple carbohydrates, you know what I mean, to the children that have high sugar content, high in calories and low in nutrients and density and all that. So what I'm saying is, how can we then retrain students to eat healthy? Because basically that's the problem right there. And so for me, even when my daughter's school situations and I see where they have these fun days and I see the food menu, I just get vexed. So because it is nothing healthy what they're putting in their bodies. I mean, so we are fighting a losing battle. That's all I'm saying. And then coupled with food, the ingredients and the preservatives. It seems as if they want to preserve the food but kill us in the process. I'll just hang up and listen, because humanity is fighting a losing battle, and this is because of capitalism. All right, let's take, for instance, Dr. Pinto. for about 10 years ago or more, I had read where, and I know this to be true, I have been caught. Arsenic was being put in chicken from the 1930s. I think they might have stopped it in the 70s, but they didn't tell anybody that. Certain chemicals, like the amalgams, if the body doesn't digest or metabolize things like dioxin and mercury and arsenic and other heavy metals, then why put them in? And so you have toxicologists who have taken the step in the wrong direction and said that this amount is safe and this amount is safe. And it's my ideology that none of that is safe, and they are being paid by big companies to do so because we see the revelation, the information overload is exposing such things. So this is the era of enlightenment and revelation. So we can't continue to be blindly obedient to dogmas and people without evidence. You see what I'm saying? So they're poisoning us. They're literally poisoning us. Give thanks. I'll hang up and listen.
You made some excellent points. We know as worldwide we're poisoning ourselves. For example, as urologists, the male infertility rate, it gets worse and worse every single year. It's because what we put in our bodies. We look just in our archipelago of family islands. Those are the healthiest individuals there are. I mean, it's very common to see dozens of 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds walking up in Andros and San Salvador and Cat Island, living from the sea and from the land. They don't know anything about any of the fast food or anything else, and they have a normal body mass index. They don't have a sedentary lifestyle. They're walking everywhere. They're active until they reach our God and Maker. So they never sit still. But in our society, we drive everywhere. We're too reliant on healthy foods, too much carbohydrates, too much in terms of portions. That affects us in our schools. Sodas, energy drinks, chips, sweets. Obviously, that's going to make a child very hyperactive. They're not going to be able to concentrate. They're obese. We need to promote sports. We need to promote activity. And we look at where kids go when they go home. It's a lot of chaos for them. They live in violent circumstances, whether it's abuse of their mother from the boyfriend who comes in and out of their life, whether it's abuse in terms of the violence that is in the community itself. How many kids can go home and do homework when there is no desk, where half the time the electricity is off, where we talk about we're the third richest nation in the world per capita in the Western Hemisphere, but we can just drive anywhere, 10 minutes in any direction, and we can find kids lining up with buckets at the water pump. Why do we have a water pump in this day and age and we have such a rich nation? It's a crying shame, and that's the circumstances where so many of our kids are living, where they got to fetch water to bathe. They need fetch water to cook with. They're just trying to survive day by day. They have one uniform they have to clean every single day, and homework's the last thing on their mind. They're just trying to survive, and they shouldn't have to live at that young age with that amount of chaos, that amount of stress upon their life.
Yeah, they shouldn't have to. I agree, but I just wanted to raise one point about the caller said about nutrition. I mean, and again, choices. I remember, I'm a parent. I have 3 adults now, but a long time ago, when my kids were in primary school, I remember, we used to buy these I shouldn't call it name, but these high fructose cornstarch drinks, right? And I used to go to school with them. And one day I just decided, it was just overnight, I decided, you know what, I know better than this. I shouldn't be sending them with this. And we just started giving them water. They had a water bottle. Each one of them had a water bottle, and they get to go to school with their water bottle. And 20 years later, my son and daughters, they still only drink water. Because of that one decision that was made a long time ago, they got used to they were obedient kids, because I'm sure the other kids can go and get other things at school or whatever. But just that one decision that was made 20 years ago, I see even now, they continue with that habit. So it's how we build habits. And so if we make a choice and make these decisions, then, we benefit from from that. I agree with all of the exposure to all of the chips and all of that. I think there was one minister of health, I can't call no name, who banned sugary drinks. I think that ban was lifted when he left. But, these are, we can legislate some of this stuff. We can't legislate all of it, right? Some of it is choices that people have to make. But yet governments in place can legislate some things that'll help the masses. Things like that. And food security and food safety is an important thing. I really like what the caller is saying about what is put in food. Sometimes we don't know. And so we need industries to kind of ramp that up too. To look at food safety, food security, and what are our kids eating? That's important.
And as I brought up earlier, what is the future of a 12-year-old girl, a 14-year-old boy who every single minute after school they got to be packing groceries and walking home in the dead of night, exhausted, and then they're not going to do any homework. They're not focused on studies. Every weekend they're doing the same thing just to try to help their mother fend off all the bills, keep the electricity
in general,
on, pay the rent.
That's hard. But there's some kids who do that and still help and still do well. You know what I mean? So
it's hard.
It's hard.
Many of them, they're the mother, they're the father at the age of 14 to their 6-year-old, their 8-year-old sister and brother.
From a guy who used to be a pocket boy and a shelf boy way back in the day. I gotta say, you find a way to get things done, and I'm not trying to say that that's the way people should live, but there are people who live that way and still excel, right? And so we have a call.
We have another call. Okay. Good evening. This Urologist speaks.
Yes. Good evening, Doctor. Dr. Francis, I agree with you. It's hard, but it's possible.
Yeah.
And I think so many times, and I was listening to a religious program on the radio yesterday, talking about a black man whose mother, he said, a single mother of 3, who refused to go on welfare. She said, if you rather than opening up your hands to beg, use your hands in order to work. And she raised her 3 children. One of them is a doctor. I'm a lawyer, and so on and so forth. So we've seen, and they grew up in the hood. They grew up in poverty. And, he said, he knows some people in the States who rely entirely on the government, on welfare, on handout. And I think we have to get our people to believe in themselves, first of all. And I understand the circumstances because I grew up in the hood. I grew up, at least I still live in the city area. But doctor, and I'll tell you a little bit of my story. I went to school in Turks Island after moving from the Bahamas, and we had no light, we had no water, we had no amenities, the things that I was used to. I went to SAC for 2 years where we had cafeteria, swimming pool, air conditioned reading rooms and whatnot. We had none of that. We had to go home for lunch. We had nothing. I was out of school for 3 years, went back to school, graduated as valedictorian of my class. I had no help from my mother. I had no father. Okay, but it's that desire. The Bible says, if a man desires something, then he will go after it. I live in the inner city. I try to encourage these people, these young guys. But you would think that somebody who came from nothing would be prudent and would try to economize. For each couple of dollars they get, they want to splurge on Tommy and belts and things that don't really make no sense to say. Not that you shouldn't aspire to have good things, but I try to tell them, listen, it's not about the outside. It's not about what you have on the outside in terms of, some children in the ghetto wouldn't go to school unless they have Tommy Hilfiger, unless they have the Clark shoes, unless they have the belt and the this and the that, and they put the pressure on their parents. They refuse to go to school because they feel that they'd be out of place. I'm going to close this. I was at a high school awards presentation. And there was a young man there. He was of Haitian descent. And he said, when he used to come to school, the children used to laugh at him, laugh at his clothes, laugh at him. But that guy, the same persons who were laughing at him, came to him to ask him for a job. So, it's the mindset of people. And how do we change that? How do we get the people to see that, you can be in the inner city, in the ghetto, but the ghetto don't have to be in you. You can aspire to greatness. You can become somebody. And I preach that to these young guys. Instead of using your phone on watching NBA YoungBoy or whatever, these bunch of thugs, use the internet to learn something. Use it to enhance your skills. The doctor, like somebody say, all these young boys want to do is smoke backwards and go backwards. I heard of a young lady that Zedness interviewed a few days ago. At age 18, she has started 3 businesses already, just opened up a retail. At 18 years, doctor. She said, you know what? I want to break the back of poverty. I want to create generational wealth for my family. I know what it is to be poor. So she saved her lunch money. She sacrificed in order to get where she wanted. Nobody wants to sacrifice no more. They're sitting down waiting for people to hand them out. The government, or what is the government? What are you doing? There are coconuts on the ground that are rotting. There's money on the ground. But people, they're just simply too lazy to get up and to find a way. And we need to teach our people that you can do better. Immigrants come here and they make it. They make it. Same way in the States. The guy said, how come these people can come from these asshole countries? In a couple of months, you see them, they come in the project. Next couple of months, you see them, they purchase a car. Next couple of months, they're out of there. While the black Americans, they still they're waiting on Uncle Sam. And I think we are breeding that same type of mentality here. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good night.
I think you made a lot of wonderful points.
points.
I think for a lot of our youth, they need a light in the darkness. They need something to strive for. I think the media also has a role. I think we're putting too much predominance on the negative. Why do we always have the rapists, the murderers on the front page? Why don't we have these wonderful stories of these people doing innovative things, these young people striving and doing great things in their community? We never see enough positivity in the news. The news is depressing. All we see is what is bad in our society, what is getting worse in our society. But there's so many wonderful, bright sparks out there doing wonderful things, but we don't. Just seeing someone in your similar circumstances striving and excelling and achieving, that might be all you need to cling to do better for yourself. But if you're going to say that, all right, all you're going to do is talk about my neighbor down the street who's on remand for murder, or you're going to talk about this one who's on remand for armed robbery, who was in and out of jail and this and that and caught stealing this and that. Why don't you talk about the one across the street who excelled and went off to university after having 2 jobs and still doing well in university and came from a single parent home? And we don't have enough positive stories. And I think that's all we need. You are not defined by your circumstances. Let that motivate you to be better. Even if you, as yourself, or had some disappointing decisions in your life where you might be a maid in a hotel, you be the best maid possible. You become the manageress. You go on and strive for your children to not have to be maids.
Absolutely.
So let's make the next generation better than the one before it.
All right.
Any
Great.
closing?
Well, no, we could drop the mic on what the last caller said. I think we need to strive, and everybody can make it. They just have to have that inner drive to go and succeed.
I think this is a fascinating topic. I think we can talk a little bit more about it at the beginning of the next show. We are always very grateful for our listenership, and have a good night and a safe night, Bahamas.
Good evening, Bahamas.
Urologist, you will find he'll help you solve your problems on 96.9. Yeah. I telling you with early detection comes early prevention. But letting your pencil make you feel like a champion. Rise up again. Let nothing keep you down. Live your